talking to this person, I'm going to ask kind of, I'm going to put this back on them and say, hey, no action. You explained to me all the things that could happen. What happens if you don't do anything?
Yeah.
What happens to revenue? What happens to service? What happens overall to accountability? And it seems like, kind of like with everything in life, when you're avoiding that decision, you're not preserving any kind of harmony like that. Maybe it's a little more comfortable than it was, but obviously this is a problem. It's just locking in that dysfunction. You're just signing off and saying, I know that it's not good now, but not doing anything, not taking care of this right now, just is going to lock in that feeling. And again, the company's paying for that.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the BMK Vision podcast. Gary, Ryan, good to see you.
Good to see you, Josh. Good to be back.
Good to see you.
All right. Well, this is I've been waiting all this time for this week's topic. I found myself in the thick of it with a really awesome client, and they're just going through something that's probably more companies should be going through, but these folks really kind of dove in with both feet. So the setup here is it's about a $5 million MSP, been in business for around 15 years, and they've got 3 owners.
Oh boy.
So, and it's an interesting collab. One of them is, kind of older than the rest of them, has a full-time career elsewhere, but he's kind of the wise old man, the figurehead. And then the other 2 are younger than him, but not, they're not kids. And they're real in the weeds, like they're doing their thing and they're very involved in everything. And there's probably another 10 employees or so. So it's a nice size company. Where we get to our challenge is a conversation that I had with them some months ago around the frustrations they had with the business and with themselves. And this is really common in some of these partnerships where everyone does everything. Right? And it feels very democratic and, very, hey, we're all just here to help each other. And, that eventually it's a sweet thought, but somebody's got to step up and say, I own this, you own that. Let's stay in our lanes. Let's still help each other. So when we had that conversation a few months ago, they were like, right on, we get it. And I kind of always break it down into, I need one of you to own, sales, marketing, revenue generation. I need one of you own service delivery. And I need one of you to be the CEO/CFO/ bookkeeper, all the other things. Oh, and by the way, that took about 12 hours to get there. So the 3-minute lead in here is I'm doing pretty good. So they accepted that. And, then we started marching forward. Now here we are several months later, and the person who drew the sales and, revenue generation component of it just is struggling in that role. And they're all really nice guys and are worried about how to, bring that person up to par. So there's our starting point. So my first question to both of you is, did either one of you have partners?
Yeah, I ran 2 businesses at one time, which is amazing. Like, everyone should try that. Fortunately for me, they were, it was a relationship that worked because it was aligned with the primary business of MSP. We had a data center, co-location, virtual server type of environment that I partnered with some good friends on. So, and they also ran an MSP. So, yeah, we had the same thing. It was 3 partners. We all needed to have separate roles that seemingly didn't want to overlap all that much, but ended up doing that. And yeah, to organize that was very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Right. How about you, Ryan? Did you ever have any partners?
So before my MSP, I did. Okay. Other businesses. But going into my MSP, I went in with 3 rules. No business partners, no business partners, no business partners. Okay.
There you go.
And I kind of took the benign dictator approach to things. Like, I want to hear your feedback from the team, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with me. I think this also speaks a lot to operational maturity. because now after my exit from my MSP, I have an audio-visual company, and I absolutely love having a business partner in that. He handles all the day-to-day operations. I come in, I guess I would be in charge of the sales side, like this person we're talking about, but on the we're a small audiovisual company, and I mean, if we're doing 2.5 million a year, that's a great year for us. So I sell 1 or 2 jobs a year, and he handles the day to day, and it works. But I think that both of us had to get 20 years of experience under our belt to be comfortable in those roles.
Right, right. No, that's for real, and those are good examples of where, that maturity that we've gained over the years allows us to really accept a partnership well, or, "Hey, we're not really feeding our family on this secondary business that I've got some partners on." So that's good kind of context. We've seen this at Barry McKinley a number of times where you've got, 3 grown people trying to feed their families and having to navigate the partnership. And there's always, that one partner who's more difficult than the others.
Mhm.
Not because they're bad or mean or lazy or anything, just, isn't cut from that same leadership cloth where they all got into the business with the intention of technology. I love helping clients. This is my craft. This is what I do. And then suddenly you wake up and it's like, oh, the leads that we got, in the first few years have dried up. Now we have to be proactive about
Mhm.
it. Or, hey, we've got to really pay attention to the P&L. Who's going to do that? That kind of stumbling points. So I have this kind of visual that I give those owners, especially when there's, 2 partners. It's one of you owns sales, one of you owns service. Just imagine a big empty room and you got this, glass brick wall dividing that room in half, almost goes to the ceiling, almost goes to the back wall. You can throw stuff over, but it should be a little not so clear to see what the other guy's doing. You can always stand up and walk around the back of the wall to communicate about things. But hey, one of you owes 55% service department gross profit. One of you owes, 15, 20% growth. So go do your thing. And it works. It works really well until the person doing the thing that they're not really suited to do
Right.
kind of starts
Well,
not doing it.
and Josh, I just wonder there if maybe so a $2 million MSP is very different sales wise than a $5 million MSP. And so, from my experience, so what I would think is maybe that person was well suited in the early days, and then just kind of that position grew bigger than that individual, and maybe having the recognition of the partner saying, "Hey, you freaking crushed it when we were at 2 million." And the game's changed a lot. Do you still wanna do this type thing? Like, or should we be looking at something else?
That's it. Like, there you've just kind of saved us 45 minutes, right? Like, that's it. And in talking with kind of the the older person in the group, that he came to that on his own, and we kind of validated that and had those conversations. And this is where it got interesting. Well, the whole thing's interesting, but where it really got interesting was he said, "But I'm afraid of hurting that person's feelings. I'm afraid that they're gonna feel like, they failed us." Okay, that's fine, I get it.
Mhm.
The other component was kind of, I am afraid that that person will be resentful that they're not in a leadership role or that they're not working in ownership capacity. So this person responsible for the sales, highly technical, has a few clients that really rely on because this is a product of a merger, right, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
The person responsible for sales, this is a person who can sell and does
Sure.
fine, but kind of works at their own pace
Mhm.
and, not real interested in building in the infrastructure and whatnot. So it's like, okay, cool. It makes sense what you just said, Ryan. The hangups of that other owner are, is that person going to be resentful and or am I going to hurt their feelings even by broaching the
Right.
conversation?
Yeah, I think there's a lot there, right? It's the function of actually getting the job done, and then the relationship of the people inside the business. What I'm not hearing is, what does the business need, right? Not hearing that. I mean, clearly this, but if you could start there in the conversation of, have we decided what the business needs yet? And if we have, do we all agree that someone needs to own the sales portion of the business,
Mhm.
right? Um, so once you establish that function as being something that is important, and then I think what you're saying is sales is really an ownership level, high executive level accountability function, right? So at 5 million, you may or may not have a sales team, but the owner needs to own that part of the business and be accountable for it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and that did. I mean, there's a lot of layers to this, and you just found another one of them. So they've got so what we have done and what they have really done is they've gone through that initial conversation with Barry McKinley around kind of the vision of, hey, this is where we agree we want to go. Now, and this is why we want to go there, and this is the time frame, and let's take off the table the option we've been bouncing around among the three of us owners about just selling the business. So they kind of doubled down and said, "Hey, we know that in 5 years we want to be there, and we know that we have to take sales to a whole nother level." Now they have like a couple of sales staff in there. They've got a gentleman that does a lot of procurement and inside sales, moving product and whatnot. And they've got a gentleman who's a kind of a seasoned veteran salesperson, sales manager, just really awesome for these last few months. That person has been working through the vision platform, really kind of saying, here's my milestones, here's my goals, here's my action items, and is just doing their level best to build that sales infrastructure. And the observation from the other two partners is, hey, but that guy's still behaving the same way he's behaving. We didn't really agree that, that employee would be doing as much of the infrastructure build out. We agreed that you, the third owner, would be doing that. And I don't think that's like a big sticking point, but an employee doing it doesn't have quite the same weight and urgency as an owner doing it.
Yeah. The kind of the phrase that I think revolving around, this ownership level accountability. You can delegate the tasks, but you can't delegate the accountability, right? The
Mhm.
owner needs to own the outcomes of the sales department. So, in this case, if he delegated out, hey, I need you to build this infrastructure. Here's how I see it. Go and make this software work to do that, right? Like, so there's a fine line. We probably don't know the exact thing that's happening today, but let's just assume he was involved with the plan. Let's assume he's got his sales person executing on that plan. What may be happening, and maybe you can answer this, is the outcome of sales still is not improving. So is it just that they are like, hey, you just delegated all the work to someone else, and sales is up, but they don't like the fact that he just delegated all the work? Or is it that sales is still down, he delegated the work out, so there's no accountability for the outcome, and he's not doing the work? Is that the statement that you would
I
rest on?
think it's more the latter,
Yeah.
of, "Hey, none of us are seeing the traction." And the things that were a problem in that sales service connection are still a problem. And part of it's that our sales leader isn't putting the real force behind building good immediate process that starts solving some of those friction points between sales and service. And then our service leader is just such a kind of rescuer and will burn themselves out. Now they'll let you know along the way that they're burning themselves out and what they're doing. Uh, and but their frustration is just keeps rising and rising, and it's like nothing's getting better. I'm not seeing anything really amazing happening over in sales. I still feel like I have to carry this whole company on my shoulders. And then you get into those secondary or tertiary issues of our sales leader really being so highly dedicated to the 2 or 3 clients that, kind of live and die on his expertise. So, yeah, it's multi-layered here.
Well, I think I think there's a couple things, and we could be speculating on a few things here, or at least I would be, but are the outcomes defined clear enough for the team to understand what's to be expected? Like, let's say they went through that in the planning process. So let's say they're defined. Um, is there any ownership at that point of whether or not those outcomes are coming up? And if the answer is no, then we really need to kind of pull back from the situation and talk about the seat in the bus, right? We've defined the seat, right? We need a sales owner. We've defined the role of what that would look like. We've defined the outcomes that we're expecting. So then it's a matter of, does this person want to be the one responsible and accountable for what that seat requires? And
Yeah.
that could be uncomfortable. So if the CEO is worried about personal relationships or partnerships, that totally makes sense. But to pull out of that and to make, or maybe he's not uncomfortable, it's uncomfortable for the other partner, right? Which is also, a situation that could happen. So, you gotta pull out, reframe your mind, to say, hey, look, this is what the company needs. So collectively, we're trying to do what's best for the company. We've defined what the company needs. We've defined what we want to see. Can you do what is being asked?
So so you're spot on. What is the outcome we need? Has the seat been defined? Do you want to, sit in that seat and get us that outcome? I think the piece that's just coming to mind right now is, and we've talked about this, on the pod a couple times and, a lot and amongst ourselves. I don't think I really recognize this is probably my first big recognition of how challenging it actually is to go from a uh, um, uh, tactics forward type company to a strategy forward company. I think that's really the challenge they're having because you can map it out in the vision app and say this is each milestone we're hitting, here's your initiatives, and we can all say ready set go. But one of the things they haven't yet done is kind of getting that cadence of regular accountability, that weekly or monthly meeting. And as easy as it is to just say just meet, for God's sake, they're still in that mindset, or they're likely still in that mindset of we're all client facing. We're all really busy. To stop and do this seems really hard. So, and that's a big transition or pivot point in that decision to go strategy forward. Yeah.
Yes, it's also from an owner's perspective could look like it's a little bit expensive. And so one of the things that we did, Gary, I love that you used the bus analogy. We use the bus analogy all the time in Alter Enterprise. And we called it the bus driver meeting. It was every Monday morning and it was first thing. And that's where we set the vision for where we were going that week. Okay. We got sales. And sometimes people were like, do I have to go? There's very little that pertains to me. But when they get in there, they realize that there's actually more that pertains to them than they thought. Okay. That was something that we found struggled when after acquisition because I think it was very much the tactics difference between the two organizations. And I think my team felt like they suffered because of not doing that. Maybe just starting that with the owners and being like, look, we're all going 100%. Let's just assume we're all going 100%, right? We all agree that we're all going 100%. Are we going in the same direction?
We'll be right back with more, but first, here's a quick message from Bering McKinley.
Most MSPs are constantly busy, chasing tickets, projects, and fires. But without structure, it's hard to know if the business is really improving. Vision from Bering McKinley is the system that helps you work on your business, not just in it. It connects leadership strategy with daily execution. Vision aligns people, process, and performance, creating clarity and rhythm from goals to results. And the Vision app brings that structure to life, helping you create policies, track goals, review KPIs, and collaborate with your BMK consultant all in one place. Behind it all, Jetson AI, your assistant inside Vision, helps you find answers, generate insights, and take action faster. With Vision, you gain visibility, accountability, and measurable growth. You're not guessing, you're improving. Vision, Jetson, and the Vision app, your path from strategy to results. Start transforming your business today.
All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think from a cost standpoint, right? Like, if you're doing, if you're literally doing the work, right? Like customers are calling you, you're clicking buttons on the keyboard, you're installing things. Well, I don't know what level of service they're actually, but let's just assume that they're client facing. Um, that will become a sticking point for transitioning to a more strategic way of doing things. It's kind of like putting a project engineer on the help desk. I mean, their brains will explode because they just don't work that way, so it's a very similar aspect. Or you know so, it's a lot of people, especially high achievers, like to be busy. It feels good. Movement and momentum feel good. And to Ryan's point, if you're going the wrong way or going in different directions, you can find out like, hey, we move super fast, but now we're totally off base of where we're trying to be. I think like but to really like assess the risk and the cost um of like not having that role defined and not having people accountable for those roles um is like the friction on the business, right? We need $1 million more in sales than we did last year. And we're not getting it. So there's friction involved there. Maybe service is feeling that because you're quoting things too low because the process isn't done well. So you got low quotes, over promise, under deliver. Service feels the pain. You don't have enough people, whatever the case is, right? So there's friction involved. The business pays for it. They pay for it. And so even though it's not this kind of line item that you can like attack and say, hey, let's make this a little bit less, it's happening all over the business, right? It's happening from lower revenues, lower gross profits, like misallocation of resources, whatever the thing is that does show up on the P&L. Collectively, that's what's paying for that unaccountability. So that's really the important thing to think about is like, you can't just delegate out these things without any accountability and not expect to have to pay for that.
Right.
So,
Josh, do we know why this got delegated? The sales Vision app?
Well, I was almost hoping you wouldn't ask. I think I'm probably a lot at fault for that. I kind of read the sales leader pretty early, and we gave it a few weeks and was realizing that, man, that he's just not working the plan.
Okay.
Right? He's busy, and I don't want to mock it.
No.
We're all busy and he's busy, and just it was going to take forever to get his mind right. And he introduced me to his kind of in the grind
Right.
salesperson who has all this experience. And I was like, let's just have this guy do
Right.
it. He's mature. He's got the confidence of the rest of the owners. Let's just have him do it. And, I probably, it was almost avoidance in a way to just, kind of pivot to somebody who was going to get some stuff really done. And the guy's done a great job, but now without that ownership level leadership in it,
Right.
it's like, oh, are we just walking on the treadmill at level 3? Yeah, we're doing something, but are we really getting anywhere?
Okay. That my goal with that wasn't to put you on the spot. My goal was to,
No.
because this is something I would have assigned to somebody else too. Okay.
Sure.
This is something I would have been like, okay, so I had an amazing project manager. Okay. And she kind of like she joked. Okay. I knew 20% of what was going on inside the company. Okay. And that's probably on a good day, to be quite honest. But like,
Sure.
I maintain that higher level vision. I think it's delegation with that responsibility, like Gary said, having that responsibility still firmly on my shoulders. Like, if this went sideways, it wasn't her fault. It was my fault. Right. And so also knowing that she probably would have gotten a lot of the buy-in from the team on this stuff because she just interacted with them more. Okay. So I think there's a mechanism there. I think that just saying like, no, the owner has to do it. Probably, but I think there are scenarios where this could work. It's just, it comes back to that accountability.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no doubt. Yeah, this is really really helpful. As I'm kind of playing it through, and I guess this episode really kind of is a real time coaching scenario at Bering McKinley of how do we help this client. But I think there's so much that relates to so many other companies, whether you got no partners or two other partners. It's what does the company need?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to sit in that seat? And really, I think I don't know what's tougher or more tough or whatever the right way to say that is, uh, and a single solo owner who has to be all those things until they can afford to bring in professional roles to do it for them, or having two partners and trying to figure out who can do what. But starting with what do we want,
Right.
what do we need to get to where we want, and then what's actually going to be required to continuously make progress. I think that's the larger theme here. And whether we're talking about ourselves as owners saying, am I a square peg in a round
Yep.
hole trying to be this thing? Getting to that realization. Gary, did you ever have to get to that spot to just say, hey, I'm not the right person to do this, even though I'm the owner?
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking about the partnership that I explained earlier. It's like they wanted me to do sales because just like all IT people, we're all horrible at sales, and I was the best one. And I was good. I was personable. People liked me. I wasn't afraid to talk to people, but there was a lot of insecurities around, which I think is shared by many owners or people in general. Is like cold calling, getting knocking on doors, going to events, doing all the things that you need to do as sales. I didn't really like to do. So that was actually a sticking point where sales dried up when Gary stopped working on sales.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And, as an owner, I was probably the same guy. I was like, oh, I'm busy doing this other stuff. I've got my other company to run, all these kind of things. So really, I think the worst kind of partnerships are the ones that everyone wants to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the best kind of partnerships are everyone loves to do something different.
Yes.
Mhm. Right.
And
Right.
these are black and white statements, right? So there's going to be a blend. But yeah, I think it's so critical to have sales right. And it's so critical for someone to love sales.
Yeah.
So if you're not that person, that's a tough fit.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. And Ryan, how about you? Was there an area of the business that you just really kind of had to wake up and say, I am not for this particular role that's so necessary?
I can think of many times on the way to 2 million, 2.5 million and it was different, right? Because it's such and such, it was the finance side of things. I'm like, I didn't know what a balance sheet was till 10 years into business, to be quite honest
Right.
with you. I sure as heck didn't know how to read a profit and loss till 5 years in. Okay. And so I think the thing that finally got me, which we're going to bring this all right back home, was I recognized my market was changing. I recognized that we needed to become instead of a service forward organization, we needed to be a sales forward organization. And I knew I wasn't the right person for that.
Yeah, and I mean, this all kind of fits neatly under the umbrella of being stuck.
Yeah.
All right. And what are you willing to do to get unstuck? Does it mean paying yourself less to bring in the person who can do that thing? Does it mean you saying, I'm going to learn how to do something that I don't really am excited about doing? But these are just all the places people get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's tough. And it always, and oftentimes it does kind of come down to that sales component of the business. And because eventually those leads start drying up, or the what got us here won't get us there type of thing, of the referrals and the value of our network getting us to the 2 million. And that's the point that you got to decide, am I here to grow this thing, or am I here to maintain this thing? And I guess both options are fine, but you're going to have to make that decision.
Yeah, it gets real
So-
confusing sometimes too. It's like, I used to talk to my service manager about this, and he did some sales and stuff too. And, but really sales to him was like, hey, I got this quote signed off on. It's like, hey man, thank you. But that's not sales. You're an order taker. When that cash register dings, that means the order was placed. For MSPs, new logos are sales, right? Like that's really what's driving the business, new logos, and then building those new clients out. So we could get trapped in that referral based growth and, growing our own customer base growth. And then you put a sales guy on it, and then you show them how to do all the things in the sales tool that does all the quoting. And it's like, oh man, look at how much revenue I brought in. But that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about sales and growing a business. You can get some 25%, incremental growth a year doing that. But when you want to really compound that and, get some exponential stuff going on, you do need an engine that provides, the cold outreach and the, working with marketing and those kind of things. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about sales, just so the, audience knows.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And the order taking process is actually not what we're talking about.
Gary,
No.
you just crushed my world. You just crushed my world, because I'm like, I never did sales in my organization based on that definition.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and I have to kind of, second that. It's that ability to maintain the trust with an existing customer, to compel them to do more, to compel them to, refresh or do that next thing with you. That's, a lot of times it's your own craft. I mean, that is a craft, but it's a different craft. It's that, can I take a stranger who wasn't expecting to meet me and turn that person into someone who pays us money every month or every year?
Yeah.
That requires a whole nother, set of skills and infrastructure and discipline, and, staring down the barrel of that, for any owner. It's like, where do I even start?
Mhm.
And once you start, you're going to spend a year just getting lots of failures, hiring the wrong salesperson, getting yourself in corners where you thought you had that worked out of how you're going to propose things or do a first meeting, and you found out that it wasn't going to be effective. I mean, it's a painful, 1 to 2 years of figuring that out.
Yeah, you're shining the light on yourself and saying, am I really doing this?
Mhm.
Did I really have any kind of specific knowledge or any skill set around how I grew the business? And the cool thing is when you're the only owner, and most MSPs do grow through referrals, and their clients grow, and it's actually kind of nice. And that's why it's a good business to be in, because it doesn't take that next, person to get to your website to click buy. Like that's a hard business too. But what you're doing is you're shining a light on yourself and saying, how do I do this? What do I do? How do I even get new business? And then you have to go and tell someone else how to do that. That whole process is really challenging if you don't actually know how it all happened. you know? And that's where I was. I'm sure other people experience that same thing. Hey, Josh, on the CEO kind of, letting this person stay in the seat, just from his perspective, what's your best guess at kind of what he's thinking there? Is it blame? Is it shame? It's on him and he's the one doing something wrong? What's the dynamic there? What's happening?
I think what's happening there is that sales leader is really nice guy. Like he's a personable guy. He's got his own fun quirks and everything. The CEO is in his headspace. It's what kind of friction is this going to create when we face this head on? Like he's committed. He's going to face it head on, but that's just it's a lot of anxiety around what kind of disruption are we about to experience. Is it going to be some anger coming out from both those two partners down at, the guy responsible for sales and the guy responsible for service? Are they going to beef? Is that going to bring up some old scar tissue? Is our partner who's doing the sales leadership going to kind of shut down and, have their feelings really hurt? I think that's the hangups of just how to navigate that.
Yeah, if I'm talking to this person, I'm going to ask kind of, I'm going to put this back on them and say, hey, no action. You explained to me all the things that could happen. What happens if you don't do anything?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What happens to revenue? What happens to service? What happens overall to accountability?
Mhm.
And it seems like kind of like with everything in life, when you're avoiding that decision, you're not preserving any kind of harmony like that. Maybe it's a little more comfortable than it was, but obviously this is a problem. It's just locking in that dysfunction.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
just signing off and saying, I know that it's not good now, but not doing anything, not taking care of this right now, just is going to lock in that feeling. And again, the company's paying for that.
Right.
Mhm.
J-
Yeah, there's no doubt that, and that's such a key, um, you know, observation of, you kind of go through, well, now here we've got this problem, we can do this or we can do that. Well, there's always that third option of we can do nothing, right? You can ignore it, and maybe sometimes doing nothing is not the worst answer, but if it's not the best answer, you're probably just causing a bad situation to get worse and harder to face when you have no choice but to face it. Oh, yeah, fair point. So it's interesting to, find, these leaders who have a lot of experience and watch them come up with really unique, tough situations. And then kind of looking at where Barry McKinley shows up to kind of walk them through that improvement process, regardless of how painful or how gritty it might actually get. And I'm spending a lot of time thinking about that in this call of, what's the role of the consultant here? And I think the role of the consultant, well, actually, let me ask you guys, what do you think the role of the consultant is in terms of helping that CEO, execute on a step towards a more optimized, org chart?
So I kind of always see it as we help them walk around the problem, right? We help them see it from all angles. So an angle that I might bring up to them is, what if this person's relieved? What
Mm,
if this person knows they're drowning and doesn't want to say anything? And you sit them down and they're like, oh, thank God. I have wanted
right.
to have this talk, but didn't know how to bring it up. That's actually been my experience more than the other. Let's say, out of 10 conversations I've had to have like this, one of them, the person got upset and didn't see it coming. All other 9 of them were like, yeah, we've talked about this. We've talked about this. It's just not working. What other seat on the bus might be a good fit for me? And then it's like that breath of fresh air, and maybe put the energy into thinking along those lines instead of worst case, because honestly, my experience has been worst case happens a lot less than we think it does.
Mhm. So what I heard you say is the role of the consultant is to really kind of get that 360-degree
Yeah,
view of the problem and kind of play out some of those other likely outcomes.
absolutely.
Gary, what's another area that you would say kind of the role of the consultant is in helping through a scenario like this?
Yeah, one, get them in the room together, right? So kind of
Mhm.
what Ryan's saying is like get this conversation started. So that's the main role that we play. And then from a tactics standpoint, just around, I guess, setting up the strategy, right? It's like it sounds like you did a good job here where you kind of define the role, you define the need, they agreed to it. Um, where you said it might have fallen apart was you had it, the things that needed to happen delegated.
Mhm.
I think where you can get stuck there is in a coaching, too heavy coaching, right? So let's
Mhm.
just say he said, "Yeah, I want this role." Great. You coach him on what the role is. Great. Things don't change. Are we avoiding the problem? Right? And that's really our job as consultants, if they need us to, is to kind of define clearly where where the coaching stops and where the avoiding begins, and we need to identify that for people because we're not emotionally connected in the same way, right? So we can really help there and say, hey, look, we went through this, we've met numerous times, we've got everything running in the right direction, but we're finding out that this is still not working. And we could be a backstop for that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. What comes to mind is when I could probably three scenarios keep running through my mind, and unfortunately, for a period of time, my outcomes were one of the partners leaves, and the other two or the others buy them out. Like I've facilitated that conversation way too many times. And, I think in those cases it was right. But I think I have a little bit of scar tissue from, oh man, I don't want to, go down this road of I pressed and pressed and pressed. And suddenly some guy's saying, just buy me out. Like I hate that as an outcome. That's not a fun outcome, even though, in so many cases that is the right place to end up.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's I think that's a natural evolution of the business.
Yeah.
If you have people
Yeah.
that are growing, I mean, we're making a lot of assumptions here potentially is like, are the other people happy in their seats? Is that all
Right.
working as well? But let's just assume that's true. With every relationship, there's people that continue to grow and some stall. And that's just the way life is. Um,
Right.
so I'm less concerned about that overall because what we're trying to do is do what's best for the business. Because if the
Yeah,
business
that's
isn't
right.
doing well, it's affecting everyone,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and there's nuance there, obviously, but I think that's the key is what we're doing the best for the business and can we continue to do what we're doing?
So let me throw this out to you guys. The scenario of you've got it doesn't matter this company, another company. You've got two partners. We'll even call it three. Um, does every partner have to have a leadership role? Is that written in stone somewhere that because you are a partner, you must be a leader in the business?
No.
What do you think, Ryan?
I think it's all about how you set it up front,
Yes.
right? I think it's all in that conversation. There is no right answer there. Okay.
Mm.
It's what works for the groups because let's back up a little bit and let's look at what is a business partnership. By going into a business partnership, in theory, what you're saying is you have something I need, because if otherwise, why would you do it? Right? Like it's not more fun having to run your decisions past somebody, right? We don't normally do this for our mental health. Normally there's baggage that comes along with this. So looking at that from the standpoint of, okay, and what we normally find I've seen is one person's the money person and one person's like the rest of the stuff. Okay. And that has its own complications down the road, because then the person doing all the stuff is like, well, now we're making money and they're just sitting there. Well, they put in the money up front type of thing. With three, I mean, I've got a friend who's got 4 business partners, and I'm just like, how do you guys make any decisions? And I don't think that a lot of people put enough thought into that up front as to what are these other people bringing. Oh, I just want to have a business partner is literally what I've heard some people say. And I'm like, well, why? That's like, yeah.
Yeah, I think the definition of what a partner is important,
Yeah.
right? Like partners mean 50-50, business owners, to a lot of people, but that's not necessarily true. And maybe is there a difference between partner and owner, right? Like, you can own a piece of a business without being an active partner. You can be an investor in a business. I mean, it's literally called a limited partner. So, I think defining that, like Ryan says, like, how did this start? What is the contract? What's the operating agreement? I bet you that this company specifically may have had some issues with that at the beginning. And if it's like, a merger, those kind of things, those get very tricky. So maybe that's what needs to be re-identified here. But ultimately, the reason why I said no is because it doesn't, the terminology doesn't matter. It's the definition, right? It's like,
Right.
what does partner really mean? Do they expect to get paid 50-50? Well, yeah, okay. They're a partner and they should be doing the work to do that. But, if they're not doing that work, they can still be a partner, but they don't get paid as much.
Right.
So I think it's
Yeah, I think that's always been an interesting one to me. It is a case of you made your bed, now you got to lie in it type of thing of, hey, y'all agreed you each own 50%. And, if one of you sucks in business leadership and the other one's great and evolving and growing, that's the bed, man. You can try to renegotiate the deal, but the fact is, if you've got an awesome employee type of partner, it's like, well, they just kind of won the lottery, right? Hey, you get to do the job you're always doing. You don't have to stress out about much other than that once every quarter, ownership meeting. You just get to come to work and do your thing. It's not going to feel great for the one doing the heavy lifting, but if that's the bed you made, you better figure out how to remake it or live with it. Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, gang. Well, that's the scenario for today. And I think my recap, and I'll ask you guys for yours is, clarity and conversation. And I'm kind of borrowing yours, Gary. It's just, what does the company need? What is the seat? Does that person agree to be in that seat or not? And do they know what's expected of them? I think that's the conversation in this particular case that CEO is going to have with both of them.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Gary, what's your recap here?
Yeah, I think that the business doesn't really care about titles. It only feels accountability. So I think that's really what people need to start thinking about.
Fair enough. And Ryan, final words on the matter?
Think about what it would look like if you and your business partners re-interviewed for the roles that you currently have. I think that could be a fun intellectual exercise. And maybe you just do it in your own head as one of the owners and be like, I would never hire them for that role. Well, that's kind of telling. But yes, everything you guys said, I think this has been valuable. And for those of you who are thinking about business partners, think about this ahead of time and make sure that you as clearly can outline your roles as possible.
Yeah, right on. Well, excellent, guys. And everyone else, thanks for joining us here today. If you got some comments or some thoughts, leave them in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Means a lot to us. Bye.
Bye.
See you guys.